welcome everyone out there in the audience and brothers and sisters who are on our Zoom call and those who are out there live on Facebook or YouTube. We want to greet you and welcome you to our fourth, I believe it's our fourth webinar titled Stopping the Violence, Crime and Violence in America. Today we have a special presenter, a special guest. As you know, throughout the course of these four seminars, our goal is to listen and to learn from different angles of presenters who are concerned and who have worked in the field and in the trenches in the areas of how do we bring the resolve, minimize prevention, all various avenues that we can come, stopping the violence, curbing the violence, and also the crime in America. As you know, a large part of the crimes are committed by guns, but we are learning every day it's not only the guns, but there are other factions and root causes that cause people to be inhumane to one another through crime and violence. We have a very special guest, Anthony Millay, who is originally from New York, which is actually, we were just discussing, we can go in more sometime. Anthony, my hometown, where I also grew up, New York City. And he is the president and senior consultant of AMI Global Security, LLC, which is an international security consultant. He deals with firearms, but he also, most importantly, he deals with firearms licensing. They have to go through to him to license. But why we have him on is that he's coming with a very unique perspective. And how do we prevent the atrocities of people being trapped in a situation and not being able to get out and ultimately being senselessly murdered? As we saw in Uvalde and other places, we see these kids and people, or especially our children, are being senselessly murdered. And his perspective is based on, let's reevaluate our federal system when we are confronted, when schools or places, big places of business are confronted with, these mass shootings. Let's what should we do? What else can we do to minimize the atrocities of those who become victims of being murdered? And one of his angles is what he calls run, hide, or fight back. Or fight back. Fight back. So I love what he says. He's going to say it. He says, when you look at children, it is true. When kids get scared, they can run about 100 miles an hour. They can do a sprint. And that sprint in itself is hard to shoot. And it could be a hard to hit target. But anyway, we'll let him explain. I would like to also to ask Dr. Jenkins to come on to give just a little bit more of an explanation and introduction to this wonderful brother Anthony Millay, that we have been discussing with, and he's really inspiring. Welcome, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Oliver. I'm very happy to support this program. We are very serious about ending the violence and also dealing with this tragedy that's continually going on against children in schools, against police officers, law enforcement, against common citizens. We want to stop the violence, and we've got to do different things to be able to do that. We met Mr. Anthony Millay when we were doing a special program on honoring the 65th Regiment of the U.S. Army that was in Korea with General MacArthur, and they're the Puerto Rican regiment. They were one of the most highly decorated regiments and also uniquely received the Medal of Honor from the U.S. Congress. Very, very few medals like that have been given to regiments. So Anthony came and we met him in the Bronx, where the Puerto Rican regiment has a special national headquarters. He's the executive director of that regiment. And then we also found, as we got to know him, he's an expert in security. He's an expert on also peace and bringing solutions to the community. We were talking earlier today about how he engineered for Washington and New York the ability to break up drug sales on the streets, very much working with the community. And this is why we really want to understand more deeply the problem, just not what the headlines in the news talk about. And we're not pointing fingers, we're not blaming anybody. But Anthony sent me the other day his study he has done on this problem with schools from years ago, and it's more current than ever right now. So we're excited to receive that presentation. Anthony is a federal firearms licensee. That means he's the man that does the background checks, and he's not against background checks, but he also is not easily one that approves anybody. He feels that if he meets people that really are not qualified or they have other issues that may not show up on their background check, he will not permit them to be a firearm owner. But he's showing us today a different way of looking at how to stop the violence in the schools. And they can be stopped, and it must be stopped. And therefore, I'm just very honored to present the president of AMI Security and a dear friend of Maria Vargas, who was helping us lead the Peace Road activities across America. So welcome to Mr. Anthony Mele.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you, Reverend Oliver. I mean, after an introduction like that, I'm waiting for that guy to show up. I want to hear from him also. But thank you very much, and welcome to everyone out there. I don't know who's out there in the audience, but I know that I will structure this where I'll give a little bit of a little lecture, a little bit of a background, and then with the permission of Reverend Oliver and Dr. Jenkins, we'll open it up to any kind of questions and answers or any questions you may have. You can pose, because everyone has a unique perspective. So this is about perspectives, right? This is about looking it through different lenses, right? So there's the attacker, right? And the victim, right? We understand things through the view of and the optics of the victim, but then we also have to try and understand it, if we're going to combat it, from the perspective and the viewpoint and the optics of the attacker, right? So what's the difference between, wolves and sheep? Right? Dinner time. So this is the kind of perspective, that we need to look at it. And I think part of the topic that we were open to discuss today is the school lockdown policy. School lockdown policy. My colleagues and I had a roundtable review of this policy back in 2013, in the wake of some of the attacks that you all well know of. And we came up with an exercise that will help save lives. The goal of it is to help save lives, is to survive. And so at the end of our conclusion, at the end of our study, came up with the 3 words: run, hide, fight. These are the 3 options that are left to you when presented, when it's in a dangerous situation or situation under attack. So within the framework of a school attack, right? There's 2 types of attackers that do this kind of things. One is the psychopath, sociopath, right? Who has no empathy, no value for life, and whatever delusion is going on in their mind, why they're doing it, that's for another study. The point is that that individual is armed and he's inside the facility and he's there to do harm. The second type of character or personality profile that would do such a thing are the professional, which would be the terrorist, the hostage taker, all right, that belong to some type of cult, right? And in that cult, in whatever their belief systems are, they believe by taking hostages or creating a terrorist situation, right, will affect government policy or hold hostages and trade for prisoners, held in some facility, and they will want to do a trade. So these are the two types of attackers that we're looking at, and we have to prepare for both, but the preparation for both is not the same. It's not a one size fits all. So when the policy comes about, and again, we're not pointing fingers, we're only looking at it from a objective point of view. So from this moment on, let's look at it from the perspective of one of those two type attackers. Now, the social psychopath, when he wakes up every morning when they wake up, there's a decision process of today is the day that they're going to snap. Today is the day that they're going to go ahead and do whatever it is that they've been imagining, whatever demons have been whispering in their ear, whatever evil is percolating in them, whatever is motivating them, that morning, they're going to do it. So if they didn't do it today, it's because they decided not to, okay? But the day that they do, they know the process now, right? Because they've been thinking about it, right? They've been researching it, right? So they know that if they walk into a facility and they say boo or bang or anything else like this, they know that each of the school facilities have been trained to go into what's been called lockdown, which means that all the doors will be locked, the children will be locked inside the classroom, right? And the administrators will cooperate with them. So whatever you want, we'll do it. What do you want? And as you know, the social psychopath type is just there for murder and mayhem, and they kill everybody in sight. Now, what we found out is that from the first time the first shot is fired and a 911 call goes out to the time that it takes for emergency services units and police to arrive, observe, organize, and take action, let's say we give it about 10 minutes. Okay, being, distances and such, but an average. So let's give it 10 minutes. For some faster, some later. 10 minutes. 10 minutes is composed of 600 seconds. 600 seconds is 1 second is all it takes to pull a trigger. So think about this from the time that it takes from the first call to out for help to arrive. That psychopath is running up and down the hallways, all right, or throughout the facility, unopposed, unchecked, right? And this kid in Uvalde had 1,700 rounds. He had 1,750 rounds, right? So bang, 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 and such, right? And he's going through the place murdering people. Now, everybody in the place has been trained and conditioned to sit in place, to stay there. Now, we're not blaming fault. I'm just saying what the policy has been and what they're training, how their brain was trained the brain. So they're told, oh, geez, I'm sorry. So they're told to stand down, stay in place. In the meantime, the perpetrator, right, has access, however he got access, but he's out there murdering people. Now, you're talking about a building that's filled with at least 500, 600, some 800 people. And all of them have degrees. And they're all hearing shots being fired. And they're hearing children screaming, mommy, daddy, help me, help me. And they still, for whatever reason, are staying in place and not trying and resisting the natural urge and the natural instinct of self-preservation and to flee. So as I say, even when duck hunters shoot at a gaggle of ducks fly in every direction, they scatter. And the duck hunter is trying to get one, right? How much more smarter are we than ducks? Ducks don't gather up below a bush and hide and say, be quiet. They scatter and go. So the thing is that what we realized that for survival within that window of opportunity, it is best that everyone be trained to escape and evade. So each facility must look at their particular situation and be trained through the perspective of the bad guy. What would the bad guy do if he was here? What would the bad guy do if he encountered a locked door? What would you do if he turned around and took one child and held something to his neck and said, open the door? Says, oh, you don't want to open the door? And he had a gas can and spread gasoline and lit it up. Okay, or basically shoot through the place. So you see, you're creating a hostage situation. Now, I don't even want to get into what happens in the terrorist who wants a hostage situation. Okay, that's for another discussion. I'm going to focus discussion on the sociopath, psychopath. So when that psychopath is running through the place, why in the world would you stay with the danger? If there was a structural fire, you would flee the fire. So now you've got a fire just as dangerous embodied in a sociopath coming to you. Why would you stand there, sit there and wait for him? So this policy has conditioned teachers and other guardians to stay in place. And the sociopath might be mentally ill, but they're not stupid. So they know how to get around the policy or to exploit the policy to their advantage. Even in this thing in Uvalde, we understand. Ramos went in the classrooms where the children were hiding, because he knew they were in the hiding mode. And he says, any children in here need help? Anybody needs help? Come on, I'm here to help you. And they came out of hiding. And when they did, he murdered them. So he used the policy and the innocence and the panic of children to his advantage. So we really need to take another look and review of this lockdown policy and how to retrain our staff, administrators, and others and children within the school, how to exploit that first window to escape and evade. Now, as Reverend Oliver was saying in our earlier discussion, a healthy child can run the 100-yard dash in an average of 10 seconds. Did you know that? Now, I'm old and slow. I need a car to go 100 yards, okay? But a kid can travel on his two legs 10 seconds. Another kid, maybe 20 seconds. Another kid, 30 seconds. The point is that within a fraction of a minute, children can put a lot of distance between them and the danger. 100 yards. Now, if you're a parent of one of these children, God forbid, in that situation, where would you want them to be? Would you want them to be there in the danger, or would you want them as far away from the danger as possible? So why in the world would you lock them in with the danger when you can train and drill for a means of escape? Kids are smart, okay? Kids are smart, and figure out a way to train the brain and condition each one in the whole place to exploit the situation, assess the situation as it is, but try and get away. So the building's a big place. So if something is occurring on the north side of the building, why would you lock everybody down in the south side? So if you broke up the place, for instance, by zones and make a code by color, so code red, code blue, code white, and you drill, if they hear, if there's the ability to have something over the address system, the public address system, all right, and the kids hears code blue in section, in section 1, then they know to get the heck out of there. If they know that the action is happening in it's code red, section 2, they know that the shooter is there, and you're gonna have to hide or figure out a fight plan. The adults who are there figure out a fight plan because he's here. He's coming to get you. He's going to hurt you, right? So there's other things that we can do to help with a fight plan. In the meantime, help is on the way, right? So the thing is that how you can use that window, exploit it to get as far away as possible. And I'll stop there. If there's any questions you want to go back and forth about that, Reverend Oliver.
Yeah, well, thank you. I know you have so much to say. We're really grateful for what you just said. And it's interesting, and we will open up with discussion. I mentioned your plan to my wife, who is also a school teacher, and she told me that she is trained that way. But she said it in a way that she didn't agree with it as well. Because as the kids are sitting huddled as sitting ducks, and it's painful to think that they have to sit there and be subjected to such atrocity, So, I mean, and I think Reverend Jenkins asked one question, because when I was reading your report and I kept looking at the date, you wrote that in 2013, and we're in 2022. And I thought it made sense in some respects. And Reverend Jenkins had asked you a question. He'd ask you, then why has the federal government still adopt this plan when there might be some other options to prevent such atrocities and saving lives of our young people and others? Could you tell us what and why the federal government or those policies are still in place and they're not reviewing them, other options?
Yeah, sure. I can theorize, and I don't want to cast blame or liability on anyone, but liability is probably one of the driving issues. Also is that it comes down to the training. Of course, they're going to say run, hide, fight. Of course, try to get away. They're going to say that. But when you hear the verbiage, right, that, okay, if the emergency happens, we're going to lock down, that also registers in the brain of the people in the place. And so they're just conditioned to hear lockdown, and that's what they do. And they think that that's the be all and end all solution, and it's not. Now you're in a tactical situation, okay? It's not a static situation, not something where nothing's happening, right? It's tactical. Things are going on, right? There's one attacker, two attackers, maybe more. Maybe in that time he's putting bombs in the place. Maybe he's wiring the place. Maybe he's ready to set fire to the place. All right. Now, at all this time, you're giving him the tactical advantage. So there might be protocols in place. They're going to say, well, the protocols is that we do this, and we do this. That's the protocol. Protocols are fine. Protocols are natural. Protocols are a guideline. But a protocol is not a substitute for sound judgment, good planning, and action. Okay? Or surrendering the tactical advantage. If you have if the opportunity arises to escape the danger, you don't say, well, the protocol says I should stay, but the situation on the ground gives you the opportunity to get out. And how many sat there, even when we think about Newtown? Can you imagine? The classrooms were side by side. The teachers were in each of the room with the doors locked with the children in it. Next door, he was shooting each one of those children, and I hate to be graphic about it, each one of those children while they're screaming, mommy, daddy, help me, help me. And how could you sit there and hear that and still not be frozen and not run, not try and get you and those kids out of there, flee to danger? So something must have happened to purge the natural instinct of flight, the natural instinct of self-preservation when you're even in earshot. Not to mention the people who were on other sides of the building and upstairs, knowing what was going on and still opted to stay. So something was purged out of them in this training. And so this has to be unlearned. Now, as far as what the policymakers are going to say, they're going to say, well, no, we never told anybody to stay there. We told them, do this. That's what they're going to say. But the studies and the results, and we see what happened each time, tells us something different. So I propose that each one of it's going to have to come from the parents, and the parents are going to have to turn around and demand this kind of action needs to be done. And I'm sure that many teachers want to also participate, but the unions are telling them different things. They're being threatened with their job, their livelihood. Insurance people are saying, well, if you say that, then you're going to be sued. So there's liability issues. The police are saying, no, don't do that because, we're the cops and we know better and we'll do whatever, keep everything under control and contained. When everybody knows that in pandemonium and chaos, there is no control and containment. It's a free for all.
So when you say liability, is that what you meant about the area of liability?
Yeah, we can surmise that there's a conversation happening at the highest levels of administrators saying, well, what's our liability? If we tell them to do this and they end up with that open us up to legal suit or legal liability. So, and how much of that is influencing this type of policy? You see? So unless the pressure comes from where it should come from, meaning the parents telling the leadership and administrations what is expected to be done. Because in the study we showed, when the terrorists in Beslan took the school in Beslan, they counted on parents reacting. That was part of their plan. So while parents were dropping the kids off, then they heard on the radio and they heard through other phone calls that the place was taken by this terrorist group and they were wired up. Parents made U-turns. There were dads showing up in their boxer shorts and flip-flops, jumping out the showers with their hunting rifles and their hunting shotguns. And then they had to were in confrontation with the police who were on the scene. So they caused conflict, and almost deadly conflict, between the police and the civilians, because the parents would run through fire to get their kids out.
Yes, yes.
So the terrorist planners plan on that. And as you see, that's what exactly occurred in Uvalde. If we just take that as a study, the police were outside for 90 minutes.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
Which is just
Ludicrous.
inexplicable. There's nothing. I got nothing. My God, we got nothing for that. I can't.
So Reverend Jenkins, did you have something that you like to add to
Yes.
that?
Yes, this is so important, Anthony and Dr. Oliver. The Wall Street Journal had an article or op-ed by Peggy Noonan, very respected writer, that said Uvalde was the biggest law enforcement breakdown in the history of America. And I tend to agree. And what I'm hearing from you today, Anthony, liability, yes, if the schools tell the children to run and the children get shot running, which is highly, more difficult than going into a schoolroom to shoot everybody that's hiding there. But, the schools are worried about liability. There are a lot of issues, but the most important thing you brought out just now was the whole idea that this policy is making people vulnerable, completely vulnerable, and that there was, an hour and a half. So, and you also mentioned about the protocols and the standard procedures of police. That's what they say messed up Uvalde. They were waiting, following protocols that didn't fit the situation. Can you fill us in on that a little more, Anthony, about Uvalde directly? Why were they waiting? Why were they waiting an hour and a half?
So,
and like you mentioned to us the other day, there were windows on that one-story school that children could have been getting out.
Out the windows, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not in a position to do a critique. There's not enough info in intel to study it, but I can give you a general overview. So what I did was I Google Earth the Robb Elementary School, got an aerial view of it and a 3D view of it, and noticed that it's a low-lying building. So it's not a multi-story building. Also, it's expansive. It's not a condensed place. It's really large, couple of buildings in this facility. Also, there's other questions that need to be asked. See, the right questions need to be asked. In Uvalde, Ramos is 18 years old, seemed to be a bit troubled, okay? Obviously underneath the influence of something other than oxygen. And he obtained the firearms that were reported that he had were two very expensive firearms. One cost about $2,700. The other one's about $1,900. He had 1,750 rounds. Rounds for those kind of weapons are about $2 a round. So we're already talking about how did this no job, no credit kid obtain somewhere around what, $8,000, walk into a store and walk out with this kind of weaponry. That's fine. Where do you get the money? Now the question is, If somebody gave him the money to do this, then he didn't act alone. It was a plot. And if that wasn't the case, then where he get that kind of cash? See, that's the real question. Now, as far as the police procedures are, the years you guys showed up fairly quickly, but no one breached. No one breached. They're all saying that we're following protocol, which is one of the reasons why I bring that up, because that's what they do. There's a protocol. They're all following protocol. OODA loop says to, OODA loop is an acronym that law enforcement and shooters and guys who train shooting use it as an acronym. It's observe, orient, decide, and act, and then do it again. Okay. So because the situation is always changing. So the situation is like a flowing river, right? The situation might have been this 2 minutes ago, but it's a different situation 2 minutes later. So you have to always observe and orientate and act. So whatever they did there, there's nothing I can analyze for 90 minutes standing outside, hearing the kind of shooting that was going on, and the screams and cries of children you can hear in earshot, and not to mention 911 calls to dispatchers. I got nothing for that. So that's for another tale. That's a tale for another day. Now, however, there were children that were getting out. There were people who were running. There were parents showing up at the place, battling it out with the cops on the scene. In the meantime, the shooter was in there, doing his evil. Now, and then later on, we heard about off-duty parent who happened to be a off-duty Border Patrol officer was getting a haircut. Obviously, maybe he didn't have his firearm with him because he got a firearm or shotgun from the barber shop he was in, which tells me another story. I mean, what kind of place is this where the barber has to have a shotgun in the shop? Okay, so, and luckily that he did, and this guy acted. He went in, and whatever the story becomes, the narrative becomes a little vague, but he went in, rescued his wife, daughter, others, got others out, and dispatched. Maybe he dispatched Ramos. Ramos dispatched himself, but don't know who did. But it took his one action to turn around and force the situation to happen. So the question now, right, where was the leadership? Where was the leadership? Even if in the absence of leadership, then you step up and become the leader. So just because no one can say, well, there was no leader. If there's no leader, then you're the leader. You're the leader. You lead.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Thank you very much for that. That was really wonderful and thought-provoking. A couple of statements that were made was made here on the chat. One was I did think about one of the preventions when a person had indicated using the fire alarm in the sprinkler system to kind of slow the person down, if that was possible. The other one was, I think me and you, or we discussed a little earlier about if you don't arm the teachers, but you can have enough off-duty police or those people in there who could make, better decisions and act more efficiently. And I think one of the other ones was about these policies. Do you think these policies would ever change on the books or in its training or whatever other unspoken rule that they indicated? So how do you see all of that?
Thank you. Those are all excellent questions. I'll try and eat this pie one slice at a time. So first of all, change comes from the top, but it has to be initiated from the bottom. The reason why the people at the top are comfortable in their positions and their salaries and their pensions is because no one's threatening to take them out. And so when decisions are being made first through the filter of will I keep my job versus will I save lives, there's a conflict of interest there because there's self-interest and then the interest that you're there to do or the job that you're doing. So there's a conflict there which that needs to be addressed. So therefore, then you have to give them what they're afraid of. When politicians start getting thrown out of office, when administrators start getting fired, and when police chiefs are held liable for depraved indifference to human life, because that's what this was. It was depraved. 90 minutes is depraved indifference to human life. And then you hear the narrative talk about that the blame is put on an inanimate object. So just to give an illustration, if I may, I'm going to demonstrate a firearm for you. Okay, now I'm an expert in firearms. I have here a pistol. Okay, it's unloaded. All right, see, unloaded. All right, there's a very small pistol, it's a 38. Okay, now I'm going to show you how this works. See how compact it is? All right, look, it's in my hand. It's concealed in my hand. Now this pistol is inanimate. It has no character. It has no morality. It only takes on the character of whose hands it's in. Okay, so this is not the problem. Now, the way it works mechanically is just pulling the trigger. So bang, 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 bang. Right? Now, the only way, and one way only, to stop someone who's shooting at you is to what? You all know, shoot back. Pretty please doesn't work. We've tried that. Pretty please don't shoot me. Right? So we all know there's only one and one way only. When somebody's shooting at you to try and take your life and try and hurt your children is to shoot back. So, okay, let's take away guns. Okay, take away guns. This is a blade. This is a one-side blade. It also fits concealed. Now this, in a classroom locked in with children, can still end in the same result, no? This is also an inanimate object. It has no character. Okay? 5 airplanes were taken and crashed into buildings, so-called because of a box cutter. The box cutter did not hijack those planes. The planes were surrendered by the pilots because they were told that if in a hijacking situation, the protocol and the policy is surrender. The hijackers knew that, they exploited it, and as you see what the result was. But okay, let's take away knives. No knives. How about another blade? Okay, it's a shorter blade. That blade was too long. Now, how about a shorter blade? Look, this is a shorter blade. This is a box cutter type blade. This can also do the same thing. Take away all blades. Okay, we take away all blades. What about scissors? This is also an inanimate object. This also has no character. It's also not designed to do to do harm to people. It's designed to cut out paper mache and make little dolls and do things like that, right? And the schools are full of them, right? What about this in the hands of a psychopath? So you see, we're asking the wrong questions. We're asking the wrong questions. In the window of that attack, our only goal and our only policy and our only plan should be is how to escape, evade, and survive the attack, or fight the attacker and stop the attacker, regardless of what kind of weapon they may have. So first, to do that, we have to train the brain and we have to recondition our perspectives. And we have to look at the perspective from the side of the attacker. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was very helpful. Anybody else have any questions that they would like to share? You can put it in the chat. And I think that one of the things Anthony stated was taking more concerted efforts to hire more security.
Yeah, if I may. Now, I understand the perspective, so let's look at the two perspectives. Do we need to overcompensate? Do we need to turn around and turn the school into an armed camp, right? Metal detectors and have police patrolling the place and then getting our kids into the system, right? Arresting kids in the place because they violated this, violated that, and because kids do stupid things. If I got arrested for every stupid thing, I would be under the jail, okay, for my level of stupidity. So do we want that? So there's always a recurring knee-jerk reaction and overcompensation. So we want that? Probably not. Are there people out there who are former veterans of good standing, good citizens, good citizenry, family members, and others who would be happy to, in an unofficial capacity, patrol or be a presence around the school? Let's think about that a moment. Now let's take away the liability argument, because what about this? What about? And if we can what if this thing to death. But now let's look at it from the perspective of the attacker, the sociopath or the terrorist. The terrorists and the sociopath find out that one facility may or may not have concealed armed persons in proximity on campus, nearby, who was willing and able to confront them. There's another facility that has a big sign and says gun-free zone. No guns allowed here. If you have a gun, do not come here. We don't like guns. We don't want no guns here because guns are bad. So if you have a gun and you're a terrorist, don't come here because we have no guns. We don't allow guns. Now, if you're that terrorist or psychopath and you have the choice of two targets, which of those targets do you believe that they will plan to attack? So if you look at it from their perspective, which is a perspective we should, as responsible planners be, policymakers be, you look at it from the perspective of the bad guy, not your own personal political slant. So of course they would choose to discuss hard target, soft target. So yes, are there ways to harden the target? Are there ways to better protect the place? The first way to do it is psychologically. There's only one person who can stop a terrorist or a criminal from committing the crime before they do it. You know who that is?
You.
The criminal.
The criminal.
The criminal. He's the only one who can stop from committing a crime or committing a murder or committing an attack before it happens. Because there's a thought process that he goes through first before he arrives at that decision. And one of them is, and the terrorist planners are, if we attack this place, will we accomplish our mission? Will we be stopped? Will the resistance be too hard? Or will we go to a place there's no resistance? The sociopath, if I did this, I will be stopped before I become famous. Right? And then the other place is like, they're going to help me. They're going to cooperate with me.
Right.
So when he makes that decision, sir, right? His decision process is going to be, where can he accomplish it?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a really important point to make. The deterrence really starts with the person.
Yeah.
Because if he knows there's a whole bunch of guns there, he's not coming.
Or even thinks there is.
He thinks there is, right? So I have another question, and I think you alluded to it already a little bit, but it's how to change the school policies. Is it through politicians or directly with the school authorities? And then one here, how can the community and family change the current atmosphere and protect the schools without being weaponized?
Well, beautiful questions both. Without sounding self-serving, is that now based on that, we wrote this policy, my colleagues and I did this analysis in 2013. It's not top secret. Perhaps if we had more direct access to decision makers, policymakers, parents, teachers, and administrators, and we were able to present our viewpoint, maybe they would adopt our policy or they would ask for training on how to implement it. And how not to weaponize is, again, a tricky question because, again, the focus is on the weapon and not the action. I'll give you an example. In Colorado, right, in our study, right, in Colorado, a 53-year-old drifter named Dwayne Morrison, right, was watching a school in Platte, a high school in Platte, Colorado. He watched for the RSO officer to leave to go for lunch. He got in his car, he went down the hill, he walked into the place, he announced that he had a gun. The place immediately said, we have a lockdown policy, we have a policy just for this, no problem. Lock all the doors, whatever you want, sir, please don't hurt anyone. So they locked all the doors. He went into a classroom, he threw out all the boys of the classroom and he kept seven girls hostage. 4 hours passed as the protocol was followed step by step. Hostage negotiators, demands, what do you want? All these other things, 4 hours passed. In the course of those 4 hours, he raped every single one of those 7 girls and then surrendered. So there was no breach, there was no attack, there was no nothing, there was no surrender, there was no fight. Now the class that he went into was a sports class. It was full of the high school football players, the high school athletes. The girls were the girl athletes. They were the cheerleaders, right? The girl athletes, the male athletes, a whole football team, for God's sakes, that run and tackle people. But they were all trained, they were all conditioned to follow along and do everything. And this guy knew it. And he
surrendered. And he surrendered after.
I think he was surrendered, or what happened to him? I don't remember. He surrendered. Everybody said in the interview, everyone said that they did what they were trained. There were 600 teachers and students in the place.
So according to Anthony, I have another question for you. According to what you're proposing, how would you see the training to be enacted to the teachers? Could you describe what you would see would be adequate training?
Yeah, well, the thing is that we would have to study the facility, right? And everybody needs to know where the doors and windows and escape avenues would be. And they would also have to turn around and undergo a situation awareness. So we're not trying to make teachers superheroes or action figures. No, what we're training is the brain. Train the brain. So the thing is that once you understand what the situation is, the first and foremost goal is to escape and evade. How would you get out of here? How'd you get yourself and these kids out of here? Where is he? So we would turn around and provide some kind of training that would involve just like a fire drill, just like a tornado drill, just like any other drill, and just implement a way for escape and evasion, and identify what run means, identify clearly what hide means, identify clearly what fight means if it came to that. But your goal is to survive. Your goal is to stay alive. And you're dealing with a mindset that wants to kill you and kill everybody in sight. So there's no negotiating with that. There's no compromising with evil or evil intent. So the training would be train the brain, get into a mindset, and then implement the tactics and the tactical procedure designed and customized for that particular facility.
Thank you. Any other questions? Let me see. I think we have one more here. I'd like to. Well, some people were talking about self-defense and all of those things that are necessary or would help. But I think if the policies that are written up have their limitations thus so far, but I think what you're saying also that can be implemented is that we have to begin to look at it from your perspective, but from the worst case scenario. What is the worst case scenario in conjunction with what you're proposing? I think a worst case scenario should be implemented because we've had so many shootings in the last month that it's just, it's just horrendous. And, when you think about Uvalde by itself, even me sitting here thinking about it, it's hard to think about, you can become emotional thinking about it.
Sure.
And we have to look at, I'm a parent, and I'm quite sure everybody here, mostly on this call, are parents. And I can see myself in my underwear with the shotgun coming, because you want to do anything you can to help your children and help other children, innocence. And how do you see us as a community now? Now we're faced with it, and people are more, it's more prevalent of what's really going on, to see how we can override or reconstruct, if you will, these so-called protocols.
Sure. Not to scare the bejesus out of anyone, but if the worst case scenario is a professionally planned attack. The Breslin model is the training model for terrorists, and it's in the study, and Dr. Jenkins is going to share that study with you all. So
Yes.
take the Breslin model and multiply it. Now, instead of one school, multiple schools, multiple facilities. When the US military went into the caves of Afghanistan and went into the raid on bin Laden and got his files and laptops, part of the training and part of their plans that they had for us was to grab a school, hold everyone hostage, wait for the news crews to come, and then behead the children and throw their heads out the windows into the parking lot while the TV cameras were running. Yeah, that's the plan. That was their plan. So worst case scenario is that if one of those groups infiltrated this country, went into any one of these schools with that plan, their plan would work. Their plan would work because we would be cooperating with them. They already know what our game plan is. They already know what our game plan is. Does any football coach that you know of show up at the game and give his game plan to the opposing team? You know of anybody who does that? Why do we do that? It's ludicrous.
It's one of the other. Thank you. One of the other worst case scenarios is your introduction was, and you gave analogy to it, was sitting ducks. Don't you think? That's a worst case scenario. After
which is what's been happening since.
Which was happening.
In every case.
I have another question. Is there a way to support your proposal and get it into our school system?
Well, the best way that I can suggest is that we create a forum such as this where we can explain it, answer questions, allay fears, and have it somehow incorporated within the systems of different places. The Indian tribes called me up. I deal a lot on the Indian tribes and the Indian reservations in South Dakota. I work with the Saganju Lakota Sioux tribe at the Rosebud, Black Hills, and Pine Ridge. And so the superintendent of schools there, through the president of the tribe who knew me, brought me in, and I stayed there for 10 days. And in 10 days, I helped train all of their staff, working in hand in hand with the local police and the tribal council, okay, and parents, right, on how to implement this plan. Now, over there, some of the parents, their homes are like walking distance away. And so there were plenty who were willing to take up arms and let it be known that there would be armed resistance or armed response should that happen. That's part of target hardening. Now that may make some heads explode, but again, that's when you're looking at it from the perspective of a political perspective and not the perspective of the bad guy. See, the bad guy don't want to hear that. The bad guy doesn't want that. He wants no opposition. He wants no opposition. The bad guy hears that that's a possibility and they have to plan for that. And they have the choice between that target and a target who won't do it. Which target are they going to go?
Even when you discuss, that's one avenue, even the discussion of run, hide, or fight back. You talked about fight back, but
right.
Even how do you get that kind of support into the thought process, into the school system? Well,
unfortunately, everyone always has if I woulda, shoulda, coulda, if only if. And they come to that sad conclusion at the funeral when all those little caskets are being taken to the cemetery. Only if I knew, only if there was another way, only if I fought back, only if we went in there and we did something. Maybe this wouldn't happen. So I can't project and pretend to be a fortune teller or conjurer, but we do know and have enough study to know how the mindset of the psychopath, the sociopath, and the terrorist planner work, what they like and what they don't like, what makes a target more attractive to them or harder for them, and what doesn't. And if we make those things happen, then we force them to make the decision that they will not do their evil deeds there. We're not going to stop them from doing evil, but what we can do, is stop them from doing it there.
Yeah, well, Anthony, we're coming to the end of our program. You were incredibly enlightening. I think it's what we call extraordinary food for thought. And I think it's something that we need to look at. I think, as you had said, it needs to be brought out as another alternative voice to the community, to the politicians, to see that maybe if the whole thing is not implemented, but also it's something to consider, because we do need to save lives. Dr. Jenkins, would you join us as we
Yes.
come into our conclusion?
Yes, I would. I would be honored. I thank you, Mr. Anthony Mealy. We are going to put the link to his presentation in the chat. I've sent it to Alan Jessen. Alan, if you could get it linked up to the chat right away, I'll save us some time. But Anthony, I think we're very encouraged. We want to get behind your efforts. I think that people are desperately looking for more successful options to stop this violence, stop this mayhem. And I do believe there was a op-ed in the Washington Times by a Professor Fortune, and it was exactly about this area of terrorists now studying this school attack and how they are preparing.
They're watching closely.
They've been caught and they've been arrested and they've been caught preparing this. They can terrorize the whole nation with just two people, even one person, because they're willing to give their lives for what they believe, like you mentioned before. And also they know they could bring the whole nation to its knees in a heartbeat, because what if they did 10 schools? Just like the shock of 9/11. I was in New York City there that day, and so were you, Anthony, and many of us here. And it was just so surreal. You couldn't believe something was being done intentionally. But this is an intentional plan that's already been revealed, and it's in the Washington Times op-ed. They are thinking this way. They're thinking of every way they can bring America down. And this is such a sensitive, terrible, terrible tragedy to see these children calling 911, saying there's still several children alive in here. Please send the police. For over an hour, they were calling. I mean, it's just unthinkable. It's unthinkable. We don't want to blame anybody, but I think it's really the policies that don't allow the police to properly act and engage. We train people to make people hostages, to basically corral the hostages for the terrorists or for the psychopath, and give them total control. And that's what you point out. So Anthony, I think your work is critically important. You are a person that does background checks. You are a person of law and order. I know you're well respected throughout this country, and especially in New York. Every time I've been with you, I've been so encouraged by your patriotism and love for your fellow man of all races and backgrounds. So I really think that we want to get behind this. I think right now there are members of Congress and the Senate that are desperate to find new options. They know the background checks and those kind of things. They can expand those, but that's not going to stop this. And like you pointed out, we're dealing with evil also, and that's really has to be understood. Therefore, this reality is that many times, just like this shooter in Uvalde, didn't show the signs until the last second of anything. you'd never, it was really tragic. And that's what we find with many of these cases. Everybody thought they were a nice guy down the street. He was a little quiet. Rarely is the background check going to catch somebody that's ready to do this kind of evil. So we got to have other options. We must have other options. And you're giving that to us today. We want to truly get behind you and stop it. We want to stop this. So thank you very much for this day, and we'll be working together. And we want to give your email out to everybody. Is that all right? Can we put your email?
Please. Some people are trying to contact me. You can give them my number and my email.
Well, great. Let's put that in the chat right away. And we want to thank you, Dr. Oliver. Great work. I think we really are finding, additional good things that we can do as community and citizens to stop this kind of evil. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you, Anthony. You did a great job. And I'm with Dr. Jenkins, and I'm quite sure many others who are on this call, that we want to keep this dialogue open with you, work with you, and see what we can do. Because after all these atrocities that are happening, has happened, and we need different options. And I think this type of what I would call the alternative voice, or voice in the wilderness, needs to be brought out so people can rethink this, and it might become a policy, or we need something. And so we really thank you for your presentation. Of course, you have a whole host of things that you can discuss, because we've discussed with you, and you're a wellspring of knowledge and information. But what you've shared with us thus far has been informative, and I think everybody appreciates. We definitely appreciate all that you brought to the table with us, and so we look forward to working with you, and also we look forward to having you back. And I would like to have you back with maybe another person so we can have dialogue. Well, I think what we're doing here as well, Anthony, is looking at all of the probable solutions and bringing those people together and making one total package of a solution, because everything doesn't apply, everything doesn't fit everywhere. But if you have a package that everybody can look at and look from and extract from, then I think and everybody's in synergy about that package. Yeah, then I think we can come to begin to cure and deal with the stopping the violence and crime here in America, and and also a global influence, because you as well work on it in the global arena. Next week we have Pastor VJ Smith, and he will be sharing with us next week his angle and what he has done to stop the violence within our community. And then you have to one day, Anthony, come back and share your experience in DC. That's another one, but I think that plays a very critical role that's almost like a moral point, right? How we can touch the natural morality of crime and our little young criminals, which you described, of having the elders out there with cookies and stuff. Yeah. So we have a little, you can curtail with a little morality piece there, and you can see that people do respond to it,
Reverend Oliver, if I may interject you, sir.
Sure.
And with our friends here, without embarrassing you, I'm not trying to embarrass you or Dr. Jenkins, but we both grew up in the Bronx, and we're both about the same age group. I remember in the Bronx as a kid, when the cops got you for something, and grabbed you back in those days, right? It was like, all right, I'm taking you home. I'm taking you to your house. And man, it would be like, no, Officer Hurley, beat me up here, but don't take me home. Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong.
You're right. You're right.
Right?
Yeah,
I'd rather keep the beating there than go home. You know what it was? To have the cops take you to the building and all the ladies looking out
All
the
the,
window.
everybody's watching. Yeah, of course.
Oh,
That's
Lord,
the
no.
well, that's a deterrent. You know, one of the wonderful
Parents.
that we have naturally within us, and those things are not implemented. You know, we always talk about in the community as well. You know, there were parents out there looking out the window, and they will correct you, or they'll make
yeah,
sure.
You heard
and
about
they'll
it
make
somewhere.
sure that your parents knew what you did before you went out.
Yeah.
You know, so those type of things is the power of the family, the power of the
Yeah, the Mrs. Pastorini telegraph system. Mrs. Pastorini was looking out the window and she said,
and she said exactly. So we want to thank you again. I think we have a lot more conversation that we can involve you in. And we look forward, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. And we look forward to hearing Pastor VJ Smith next week. And he's going to describe to you how he has been working and saw the decrease in the neighborhoods and what was decreasing the crime and violence in the very neighborhoods that he was working in. And he'll share with you how maybe some protocols prohibited him from being completely successful as well. So I'll let him tell that story. God bless you again, Anthony.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jenkins. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
as well. And we want to bid everyone farewell. God bless you, and we will see you next week.
thank you for the invitation.
Yes.